This is figure 11.3 in our textbook, and it's a purslid from the Sutton Hoo burial, which comes to us from a site by the North Sea in England. It was discovered in 1938, and it is a ship burial. It was a pretty long ship, too. It was 86 feet in length, so it's pretty substantial. We think that that ship would have been buried with the dead with the intention of being used to transport the dead person to the afterlife. The individual was important. He was wealthy. He was buried with substantial grave goods, and this is one of the pieces that would have been included. This is a large purse lid that would have hung from a belt. It actually did come with coins in it. We'll see those in a minute. The last date for the coin is the year 630. The coin's 630. So we're estimating that this is pretty clearly a 7th century burial. The material that once backed the metalwork decoration, and that's what we're looking at, the white areas today, that has degraded. It's gone. It decayed. We assume it was either a kind of bone or probably more likely, I'm thinking, a leather backing. Today what we have is reconstruction, and we consider it good reconstruction because we can look at this and know what is original and what is not original. The workmanship of this is pretty impressive. It has a series of geometric decorations running along the top of it. All of it is contained in a band or decorative frame, really, that keeps everything in its own space. We also have two figural groups, two wolf-like creatures apparently attacking a human being, and we think the origin for this might be from the Middle East. Over here we have images of birds apparently attacking other birds, a giant raptor, probably an eagle, and a more passive birdie, maybe a duck, in the central section of this. Incredible workmanship that suggests that the artists making these had training and had good places to actually create their images. The surface is filled and energetic. The lines interconnect and twist and turn. The surface glitters, and there is the use of cloisonne to hold in this case, I believe it is a ceramic paste that has been added to enhance the color. And everything at the end of the day can be described as vigorous, reflecting the kind of vigor and energy of these early nomadic, semi-nomadic peoples. This is another object that comes from the Sutton Hoo burial. I think it's actually a better piece, and you do have a Smart History video to take a look at for the Sutton Hoo burial. The reason I like this, and we do think there are two of them, we do think they were shoulder clamps to help to hold a garment, a cloak, perhaps materials worn in warfare to the body at the shoulder, and we'll see a reconstruction in a moment. But this is top of the line metalwork, folks. This is beyond pure jewelry. This is an art form. The materials that are used, gold and enamel, are covering the surface, every inch of the surface, with rich polychrome. The edges, I would also like to point, because this is a clear example of animal interlace. So I'd like you to go up here. Again, I'd like you to see this as a separate compartment. There's a tendency to create borders around segments of these very rich surface decorations to create a kind of control over the rigorous energy of our beastie, the enormous power of the design, and the color of the design as well. So in a compartment, we have an animal, and I'm never going to be able to tell you what kind of animal. I'm going to say a kind of snake-like critter this time. So a lot of cases I'm just going to be saying these are critters or beasties because it's impossible to know what the original animal is derived from. This animal, though, is animal interlace because the body of our creature or critter does curve around and interlace, like shoelaces, basically, with the body of the other head. So we have two beasties kind of connecting with incredible energy, actually biting back on their own bodies. And this energy is contained within the compartments. If we go down here, we're going to see one, we're going to see another, and another. There's one on each of the four sides. This is incredibly sophisticated and rich jewelry. This is an artist's rendering of what this would have looked like, at least we think. We do believe that this was a tribal leader, perhaps a king, or at least a chieftain, a ruler of a tribal group, but certainly wealthy enough to take some pretty jazzy gold stuff with him to the afterlife, including a helmet, which you can see in the Smart History video, a sword, a hilt, a shield. This is his purse at his waist, and this is the gold buckle that we're looking at right down here. Incredibly richly intertwined. There's a kind of tension between the lines that intertwine and interconnect across the surface. Again, everything being created in compartments to separate, and I can offer you one clear example of that right here with this circle. The king or warlord, whatever you would like to describe him as, also has, we think, those shoulder clamps up on his shoulders, probably holding, I'm guessing, a cloak, but it might have been something military material as well. And the upper right shows us the coins. The coins did date into the 7th century, so we think this is probably a 7th century burial. I would like to make a comment here. Those of you who know the stories of King Arthur, King Arthur was a king who was attempting to create order in the territory in the British Isles as we know them today, after the Romans withdraw. This burial, the Sutton Hoo burial, would take place in the era of King Arthur, and might be one of, we think Arthur probably is drawn from the traditions of maybe a number of kings or leaders who were attempting to bring back order in Britain in this era. So Arthur, while he may not be real as an individual, did come to represent the effort to bring order and law back to Britain after the Romans withdrew. And this particular king or ruler might be a source, one source, for the stories of King Arthur. I also have some supplemental reading for you for those of you who are interested in kind of cracking the code of some of the beasties and abstract decoration that make up the creations of these migration period artworks. In this particular one, the images are broken down and they are labeled so that you can find some of them. Some are easy to see, some are not so easy to see. There's a couple serpents that are identified right here, and this would, with the interlace, and that's what they are, they're interlaced, they're intertwined on both sides of, this is a belt clip essentially that would have been used around the body of our buried king or warrior. And probably out of everything, the easiest thing to find, I think anyway, is right up here, and this is a birdie head. So if you'd like to check out some additional designs, and it does work, as Smart History indicates, kind of like a riddle, these forms become increasingly abstracted and increasingly interconnected, making them more and more difficult to identify. But as this happens, charging the surface of the object with incredible energy. This is what that burial looked like when it was being excavated. I did tell you it was a big ship, so it gives you an idea of the scale and the size of this. There were a series of mounds. Most of them actually had been looted, but this one, which was discovered early in the 20th century, we were fortunate enough to have gotten there before the looters did. The body of the deceased was completely missing. That had decayed over time and been lost, but things like gold do endure, and we have those today in the British Museum. There is always hope that we can find more materials that haven't been looted. And in the year 2009, a man in England who was jobless, who was on welfare, and was trying to get by with a 14-year-old metal detector, was out in a farmer's field and found this. This is a hoard of gold work. And if you look carefully at some of it, particular, if you go up here to this object, it should remind you of the decoration from the Sutton Hoo burial. And I think stylistically these are related. The materials, unfortunately, had been crushed. What we think these are parts of a cache that was hidden after it had been taken as booty or loot. And the person who had this was their cut essentially of the loot, and they decided to bury it and come back for it later to keep it safe. And of course they never lived to come back and get it. We can say that because everything's crushed. The person who took this didn't care about the artwork, didn't care about the craftsmanship, or didn't care that this was pretty. All they cared about was the worth of the gold, of the metals or the base materials that were a part of the creation of the objects. This might give you a little bit of a sense also of the chaos, the continuing chaos in this period, because this is not the only cache of looted material that we have excavated or found by chance. Objects that people had hidden with the intention of protecting them in a chaotic period with the intention of coming back and getting them later. This is our guy who actually found this in 2009. The materials were on the land of another man, a farmer, and our jobless guy right here, we're looking at him, did have permission to be there. Consequently, they split the value of this, and the value is 1.6 million bucks. So I think it's safe to say he can probably afford to get a new metal detector. In Europe, if you find something that is an antique, it does not become yours. It does become property of the state. And it does become property of the state because it's a part of the history of the nation. You do, however, get compensation for turning it over, and that's essentially the finder's fee that this individual received. So perhaps there's more stuff out there to find.